Hi everyone, my name is Sam Bark and I'm a cartographer at Esri UK, and today I'm going to be talking to you about telling your stories with ArcGIS StoryMaps. So no surprise, I'm going to be talking to you about the new features of ArcGIS StoryMaps that have recently been introduced over the last 12 months or so. So StoryMaps have always been adapting and evolving over the last 10 years, and sometimes this could have been subtle additions, and in other times big shifts in how we design our stories. So previously, we used to have to choose our template as the very first step, which kind of limited the entire design process to that one structure. We only had a few fonts and colours to choose from, and whilst this still allowed us to create amazing narratives, there was always a desire from the GIS community to do more with our story maps. So a few years ago, StoryMaps took a giant step forward, moving away from the now known as StoryMap Classic towards a newer product called ArcGIS StoryMaps. And they both shared the same fundamental objective, which was to tell stories through a web app using text, maps, and media to engage your audience. So now with the new wave of StoryMaps, we really have the ability to fully customize our apps more than ever. Lots more fonts, lots more colors, and of course, lots more design choices. So it really is an upgrade. And today I'm going to be walking you through all of my favorite bits. So I'm just going to dive straight in. And you'll notice here, we're just sat on my webpage, and this is the StoryMaps homepage. You can see I've got three different options here: the stories, collections, and themes, which we'll touch on all three today. But I'm just going to start with collections because this is a recently added item to StoryMaps. And collections are, you can use collections to quickly group stories together and share or present them as a cohesive, easily navigable set. So a collection is the perfect way to showcase the body of work that you've made with either StoryMaps or other Esri apps. You can create a shareable catalogue of all the great things that your organisation has published, or perhaps you can use it to show the range of products that you've created with your customers. Either way, it's a really useful way to share a lot of content. And let me just dive in and show you what that looks like. So I've got a couple of story maps sat in my collection at the moment. Rather than click on them individually, you can hit the Get Started button. And what this does is, it opens up the first story map. I can interact with it, I can view it, read it. And once I'm finished, I can then move on to the next story map and again, view that one. And you can see how it kind of creates a story, but you can take your readers on a journey through, as I said, the series of projects that you've worked on, which is a really powerful way to host everything in one place. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to touch on is the stories. So I'm going to dive in. These are just a couple of story maps that I've created. I'm going to go into the edit mode of this box set story map here. And today I'm going to be focusing on this pre-built box set story map, where I'm going to walk you through the variety of new features that have recently been introduced to story maps. So this includes new tools to help you design your story map, a few layout features, and of course the final thing I want to focus on is the customized themes, which is a massive part of the new of story maps. So let me just dive in and show you a couple of things then. So the first thing you'll notice is this image gallery. So if I just click this plus button here, you'll see image gallery is currently in beta, but whilst we've never struggled with adding images to story maps, I think there's always been a bit of a ceiling on how many images we can add. So now with image gallery, I can add, lots and lots of different images, and it will all fit together nicely in a gallery essentially. So as you can see here, I've added 3 different images and they all just sit nicely side by side. And they're just 3 maps that then the viewer can just immediately see. If I wanted to change the size of them, I can obviously make them a bit smaller, put them medium, small, large, for example. But just having the customization to put them all in one location is great. So the next thing I'm going to touch on is something called Timeline. So again, a recently added product. It's still in beta, but this is a way of illustrating a series of events chronologically. So you might be telling a story using your story map of certain key events over time, and using the timeline tool would help illustrate that point. And you can have images for each date or each event, which helps take the reader on a journey with you. Alternatively, you can use it for a different purpose. So for this, I've used it to illustrate the journey my map has been on. When I took the original map, I've then made some cartographic changes to it, and I want to show the reader, what I've done over time. So, the original map here, I think this is showing vineyards in Bordeaux. I then customized the base map just to, promote the green a little bit. I then wanted to change the symbol image, so they're actually grapes, so you can kind of identify that you're talking about vineyards, and then finally add an area of interest mask. So, nothing groundbreaking, but it's quite nice to see the stages in which my map has developed over, 4 different iterations. Further to this, I can then change the timeline option, so how I want to view it. A waterfall kind of makes it a bit more central. And just gives it a different look and feel. So, you have full customization over what that looks like. Okay, so the next thing I want to touch on is the Express Maps, and I'm going to talk to you about my perfect holiday to illustrate this. So as you can see at the moment, I've got an Express Map which I've created here. And for those that aren't familiar, Express Maps are a way of creating maps very quickly, very easily, all within StoryMaps. So typically, we might have had to jump into ArcGIS Online, into the map gallery, to create something there, and then import it into our StoryMap. Whereas with Express Maps, we can do it all within StoryMaps. So just to quickly show you what this looks like, I really want to go to Japan, so this is my perfect holiday. I'm just going to go into the edit mode and show you how I can add features to that. So at the moment, I've gone just to Japan. I then want to travel down to Australia. So if I click the add number point here, I can then click a point, and that then adds to my map. Likewise, if I want to add an arrow from one to the other, I can do that very simply. And you can see how quickly it is to customize and design and interact with your map. If I want to take this Australia, I'm highlighting both of them. If I want to take this Australia and put it here, and then take a little arrow and connect it. So that will then snap to the point. And you can see how easily it is to annotate your map and just add some really key features to it. So there's an insight into my perfect holiday. But actually, I'm going to take you one step further using the map tour option. So as I mentioned previously, using StoryMap Classics, we used to have to decide our template before we'd even started work on the story map. Whereas now we can kind of keep designing our story map, and as we go along and as we iterate, we can then choose different things to add in. So for this example, I'm going to add in a map tour, and you'll see the immersive options at the bottom are slideshow, sidecar, which you may be familiar with, or the map tour, which allows us to show a set of places on a map with a bit more information sat alongside it. So to do this, I'm going to either start from scratch, so just have a blank slate and decide my my tour as I go along. I can upload some photos, or I can start with a feature service. So I'm going to upload some photos for this one. So I'm going to hit Create Tour. So what this is doing now, it's going to upload all 3 of my images, and then it should generate a map, and then we can start customizing how we want that map to interact with the images. So the first option I'm presented with is guided or explorer layout. So an explorer layout is usually better when you've got lots and lots of points on the map, so people can just explore around at sort of a free roam. Guided takes the reader on a journey, so I'm going to choose for that today. And again, 2 different options. I'm going to focus on the map as we begin, and just click OK. So you can see that my pictures are now here on the left, but they don't actually relate to anywhere on the map. So I'm going to hit Add Location. Just zoom in, make sure I find London, and add that as a location. I can then go down to this one in Japan. And what I can do is, if I find Japan, pop it on somewhere at Tokyo, but I can use the current zoom extent. So if I want to zoom all the way in and get a real detailed view, I can then do that, add that as a location, and you'll see that then zooms all the way in. And finally for Australia, then going to zoom all the way out again, find somewhere in Australia. I just plot that right in the middle, add location. So now you can see, when I'm looking at Australia, that's a bit more zoomed out. But then I go to Japan and that zooms all the way in at street level. So it kind of shows you the power and how you can take somebody on a journey and really control what they see at what point. Okay, so the final thing I want to touch on is the themes element of designing a story map. So as I've touched on, this is something we've kind of struggled with previous editions of story maps, but now we are at a point where we can fully customize quite a lot of our story map design. So I just jump to this design tab here. You'll see that I've got a lot of different themes that I can choose, so I can quite quickly just float between each of them, and you'll see the differences. But actually, one of the powerful things is if I go to one of my maps, and you'll see I change the theme, that then changes the underlying base map, which is really, really nice, because I can change my theme and have the confidence that all my maps included in the story map are then going to align with that theme. So as you can see, I've used this, I've browsed my theme, I've created this environmental theme that I've used, which is just a nice green color. But actually, if I want to manage that further, I can then jump into this themes page. Again, this is just sat on the home page as we've explored earlier, and I can go into edit. See, for me, this is where the power of story map really lies. Being able to customize your story map fully and really control what your user sees and what it looks like. So the first thing to note is the ability to change the background color. Pretty easy to do, and I can, play around with different colors if I want to change it completely. If I want to contrast the text versus the background, this is in a really strong place to be able to test that out. I'm not going to walk you through all the options. We haven't got time for that. But I'm just going to show you some of the really important parts of it. So the typography is something that I have really struggled with in previous versions of story maps. But now, I showed you in the introductory slide, we only had 4 or 5 different fonts, whereas now you have a lot more font options. And if I want to, if that's not enough for me, I can then use the Google fonts, which is, I think, has over 1,000 different fonts to choose from, as you'll see, which is, really, really impressive. Just to have all of those at your disposal. I can then add a specific family, and you'll see that's already updated my title. I then want to, align the body of my text with Space Mono theme, and you'll see that's already updated as well. So being able to customize the font and using one of the many, many different Google fonts gives you a lot more customization options. So as I said, there's a lot more customization options. You can customize the buttons, the quotes. If you want the quote to look and feel a certain way, you can do that. One of the things that I really like is the ability to change the separators, which is sat just here. You can, change the look and feel of them. If I want to add a different color, make them stand out a little bit. Or if I wanted to design my own separator, I can upload that as an image, and then that will then use that every time someone uses a theme. So that's really powerful. And then I can, once I've finished with this theme, I can save that, share it with my organization. And then I know that there is a consistent theme to be used all across my organization. And then we can kind of keep that consistency across all our story maps. So I hope you can see how the new design structure of story maps really encourages you to explore the design options on the go. As I mentioned, you don't need to know what the final product looks like at the beginning of your design process. You can kind of iterate through different versions and draw inspiration from some of the different tools that are available to you. So that is a really powerful aspect of it. And this allows us to tell some amazing stories and really make the most out of our maps, our text, and our media. So hopefully you've picked up 1 or 2 tricks today. And I really do encourage you just to dive into story maps, start playing around with some of the new tools. There are, so many things that I haven't touched on today. And also there are monthly updates of story maps, so it's almost impossible to keep on top of what is coming out. But the story map platform is constantly evolving, and I really recommend you just keep playing around with it. So thanks so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the box set.